Welcome to Encouragement for Living Life with Lockwood and Lockwood. The guys are here to encourage you in your attempt to live more confidently and successfully in our world. They are highly trained and experienced mental health professionals, but they are not your mental health professional. They are sharing encouragement through information and discussion. People are complex. Just because an idea helps one person doesn't mean it will help someone else. You need to consult with your own professional who will hopefully know what is best for you and your situation. Now, it's time for Lockwood and Lockwood.
The title of this podcast, everybody, is Do You Hate Yourself? How do you know if you hate yourself? And if you do, what do you do about it? Now, how frequent is this, son of mine, people who hate themselves? Am I dealing with that small percent again of people I deal with? Or are there more people than we think out there that are far, well, let's just put it this way, far from loving themselves, and some who really do hate themselves? What do you think?
Well, I we gotta talk definitions, I think, because
Yeah.
I think
I should know you'd say that, but yeah.
you should know this by now, but I think it really depends because there's kind of different connotations to the word hate. So, in the most like general view of the word hate, it's usually something like really serious, really intense, I don't like you, or I don't like myself. And so, if we use the most general definition, I think hate's a fairly common experience for people. And then, if we use a more like technical, even analytic definition, it's kind of more extreme, technically, which is like, I kind of wish you would die and burn in hell forever. Like, one of the original philosophical definitions of hate is like wishing someone to burn in hell, essentially. And so, I would say that version of hate is probably more rare than the general intense dislike thing. So I think a lot of people do not like themselves. And in all sincerity, I think that's a good thing. I think in all sincerity, I thought that might get a reaction from you. So here's the thing. I hate the concept of self-esteem because you should not, in my opinion, you shouldn't have self-esteem. You shouldn't have some belief that you are inherently good or something because you're going to do screwed up stuff. So you are inherently neutral, in my opinion, capable of both good and bad. And I think that's a very reasonable kind of Buddhist look at things. And
I was going to
so,
say, that's very Buddhist of you. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And so, like, I come by it honestly. This is genuinely what I believe and how I operate. And so,
I know.
because of my ultimate respect for the complexity of people, I don't think that we should feel good about ourselves on a regular basis. I feel like we should be at like an idle, like a resting idle, like how motors idle. And then we should go up or down depending upon what we're actually doing. Going back to your point about guilt, I don't think we're inherently good. I think we are inherently kind of neutral. And then we're capable of good. We should feel good about that. And then we're capable of bad. And we should feel bad about that. And
Yeah.
none of that, in my opinion, by the way, has anything to do with yourself.
Yeah. Well, I know you threw out a lot of stuff there. Okay.
Yeah.
I agree. I remember when we were doing some evangelism years ago when you were young and you weren't involved with that, but your mom and I were doing it with another couple in church, and and there was a religion, I forget which one it was, but they believed that people are inherently good, and I would smile and go, have you ever seen a kid, if you leave them alone with a cookie jar right in front of them, and they're hungry? You don't think they're capable quickly of lying and just taking cookies and hiding
Yeah.
them? Of course,
100%.
we're not inherently good. We're full of all kind of impulses, longings, wishes, feelings that drive behavior. We have a conscience that we hope controls a lot of that behavior, but it does not do that perfectly, is what I would say, in contrast to your Buddhist position. So that's why we need grace, because we're all going to fail. All have failed and fall short of the glory of God. That's a truism that, I don't care what you believe, it's true. Tell me you don't fail, and I'll look at you, you're a liar. You're in denial of your own behavior. Because everybody fails at different things morally and principle-wise. Hopefully not in great degrees. Hopefully it can be corrected if it happens. Hopefully you can make something good out of it. But we all fail. And for those people who dislike themselves, the continuum you put up, dislike to hate, and then the extreme of hate, which of course I do deal with, and it's called different things. I think we're often talking about, again, extreme shame again
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
which the words people put on, I hate myself. I've heard people tell me that in my office. It's one of the things that they've said to themselves because they have such excruciating shame.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So, but a lot of people dislike themselves and don't know it.
Yes.
So how can we tell when someone either in the category of dislikes, maybe more severe dislikes, to hates themselves and doesn't know it? How can we tell with us sitting there listening to them and watching them, tell that they dislike themselves? Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I mean, just to make it super concrete for people, it's I listen for the number of times that there are discrepancies between what they say and what they do.
Right? Good.
So going back to MI, we highlight discrepancies with people. So like,
Mm-hmm.
the less
Right.
you like yourself, the more you're disgusted with yourself or don't like yourself or don't respect yourself, the more your behavior is at odds with what you say.
In conflict. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So it's like if you say you really value yourself, but then you spend, a lot of time doing things that devalue yourself, whether it's, overeating or we talked about sex and porn, whatever behaviors you're doing that actually take away from the bigger whole, the bigger good of yourself, the bigger like existential project of yourself, that tells me you don't like yourself that much. Right. So to me,
Well,
the
and
math is simple.
yeah, I agree with you in a lot. And then but don't just not just porn, those kind of behaviors, but look at why people don't succeed in school, why people don't succeed in career, why they don't succeed in marriage, why they don't succeed socially and or in their family. A lot of times they don't because they don't like themselves, and they make sure that bad things happen to them. They fail or they don't thrive and grow because they don't like, the reality is they don't like themselves enough to, they hate themselves, so they're going to live that out in their life, and most of the time not have a clue why do I keep failing at a jobs, why don't I learn from
Yeah.
my mistakes.
Yeah, let me give a really concrete example because I don't want people to get
Yeah,
lost in.
yeah,
You just said something really deep and it's going to pass by people really quickly, and I don't want that deep thing to get lost. So
okay,
you just said something that's like years of analytic training deep, which is, people keep living in ways that self-sabotage and da 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 da. It's like, yes, but
yeah,
that's wildly complicated what you just said. So let me give this an
yeah,
extremely simple example. So, self-talk is a phrase you hear in therapy land, the world's worst theme park. And how you talk to yourself to some degree is indicative of how much you like to yourself. Or so like
right,
if your self-talk throughout the day is like, oh, you screw up, I can't believe you did that. It's like catastrophizing or judging or whatever it is. If that happens all day and you have an entirely negative inner monologue all day, that is indicative of some obvious degree of dislike for yourself. So there's no super smart, talented, competent person who's just going to white knuckle it and go out there and crush it every day if you're talking to yourself and treating yourself like crap all day, right? So this is the concrete.
inside here, right,
Yeah, 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 yeah. This
right,
is the concrete version of what you were trying to say that's way more complicated, which is like the more you talk shit to yourself, the more you're going to act like that.
act
So,
like shit, yeah,
yes, exactly. And so for me, what I would say is it's important to be clear that there's a continuum as always. And secondarily, your dislike for yourself isn't inherently good or bad. It depends upon the context. So if you continue to act in screwed up ways, you should not like that. But the error here is making that about your fundamental who you are. So you should definitely not like your behavior. You should not have respect for your behavior if you continue to act in self-sabotaging ways. However, that does not mean that reflects your core sense of self. Those are two
you
very
you
complicated
you
things.
you better explain. Well, I don't know, can you explain that simply,
Yeah.
for
So
people?
so your behavior is not you. People judge us by what we do,
Gotcha.
but our behavior is not actually who we are. And so behavior is just a thing we can see and we can make judgments about. But who we
Right.
are is way more complicated than what we do. And so, like, I'm a professor and I'm a consultant. These are things that I do. But just because I
Mm-hmm.
do these things and however well I do these things is not a reflection of who I am. So the metaphor or the image I give people is a pie chart. If you look at a pie chart, right, who you are on that circular pie chart can be subdivided as much as you actually want it to be, right? So you can add in all the
Mm-hmm.
intangible things like your
Right.
personality and add in all the tangible concrete things like your age and your height and all the stuff, right? And so your sense of self could have 100 parts if you wanted it to, or it could have five, depending upon how simple a creature you are. And so, what I encourage people to do is not to confuse their behavior patterns with their sense of self. They correlate, but they're not the same thing. And so, you should never, quote unquote, hate yourself or like yourself because my my height has nothing to do with my worth as a person. The fact that I'm a male has nothing to do with my worth as a person, right? So my worth, my value, my intrinsic whateverness, right, has nothing to do with who I actually am. That's separate. That's a philosophy, religion, metaphysics thing. So I never like or dislike myself, but I should always either like or dislike my behavior, if that makes sense. Yourself should be who cares, in my opinion.
Well,
It's your
again,
behavior that you should like or dislike.
that's the empty out Hindu thing. You
Yeah.
know, yeah. No, well, yeah, and I should touch back on that self-esteem thing that you don't like. See, I believe people should inherently, hopefully, love themselves and have a basically good sense of self-worth. I think that actually allows them to evaluate their behavior more realistically, and not tie their self-worth to their behavior. That's what the conscience is for, to determine whether behavior is healthy or not. And then deal with the behavior. And if you have a good sense of self-worth or you love yourself, and I know that can get cliche, but I just heard a cancer doctor talk about if you can't do diet, if you can't do exercise, the one thing she'd recommend out of three things: love yourself.
Mm,
You got a
yeah.
better chance of recovery.
Yeah. Decrease
So
stress.
yeah, oh yeah, and it motivates you to do other loving things for yourself that take care of you and help your cancer outcome. Yeah, which you talked about at length, whether it's vegetables or loving yourself. They're kind of all three are very powerful.
Yeah.
But anyway, but so I think you can have a good sense of self worth and at the same time go, what I did was wrong. I think it helps you admit when you're wrong. I think it helps you have a healthy conscience, as a matter of fact.
Mm,
But I think the more you dislike yourself to the extreme of really hating yourself, the more your life is not going to be what you want it to be. So it's again the person who self-talk. I love what you said about self-talk
yeah.
because people aren't even conscious sometimes of how much they put themselves down,
Yeah.
criticize themselves,
Oh, yeah.
things they say in their head. And if
Yeah.
those things are going on routinely, which is a really good way for people who are listening to go, oh, cripes, I do that. And not even know that they're doing it because it's just part of who they've been forever. And if
Yeah.
they're doing that, that's going to get played out in the life.
Yeah.
So if you are critical of yourself, if you don't like yourself because of how you're talking to yourself, I mean, to me, it's a symptom of how you talk to yourself, it's a symptom of something else. But if you're talking like that to yourself, your world's going to be harder to live in. You're going to have less success and more failure, whether it's relationship, career, finances, etc.
Hmm.
But I know the better I begin to like myself, began to love myself, the better my life got in every area. I use the financial area as the biggest because it's very, very concrete and it's not as personal to share. I'm not going to share about my wife and and stuff like that. But it plays out beautifully for me.
Hmm.
And other people I treat as they learn to care about themselves, to love themselves, whatever you want to call it, their behavior follows it
Mm,
as the beliefs really change. Now, again, I deal with a
yeah.
subset of people who are hurt deeply, pervasively at an early age.
Yeah.
They have to kind of build a new sense of self inside them. Technically, that's what we call it analytically. We're trying to build some beliefs, not just change behaviors or thinking, but really change beliefs,
Mm,
rewire the brain. That's what
mm.
intensive work like mine is. The goal is to do that. So I think there's a lot of people out there who don't like themselves and would have a much better life if they did like themselves. So I think you gave a great starting point. Pay attention to what you say to yourself.
100%.
I think that's
Yeah.
better, quicker, easier way than looking at your behavior. Just to
Yeah.
pay attention to your thinking.
Yeah, and we're also not good at remembering our behavior over time. We can barely remember how we got to work today. So, you
Yeah,
know, but you can pay attention every couple of hours to, oh, how was I just talking to myself? Like that's easier to do for sure.
it really is. Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to see a whole pattern of behavior over time to go,
Yeah.
why do I keep failing or struggling with this?
Which
You know,
is
and I,
why you should talk to somebody else about it, a friend, a spouse, sometimes a therapist, like because the people on the outside will often see the data better than you,
Absolutely.
you know?
So to have good friends or a spouse that you can do that with to share those kind of things and get feedback again. But I think you have to be fairly healthy to want to do that too. And if you dislike
Yeah.
yourself, you might not be up to doing that because that would actually help improve your life. And if you dislike yourself, you may not believe you deserve to have a better life. It gets kind of complicated there. We don't want to go too
Yeah.
much into it, but
Yeah.
yeah, if you can put people in your life that'll be honest with you, I mean honest with you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that will just kiss your behind
Sure.
so you'll like them instead of
Yeah.
being honest with you.
Sure.
I have friends and where I come from in AA, we're honest with each other. I was even perplexed a few weeks ago in a meeting where this guy, why are you telling your story? A small group of guys right here, we all know your story by heart. Why in the hell are you telling your story when we're talking about faith? Just talk about faith. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. Why are you doing that? Are you filling time or I don't know what the hell you're doing. Anyway, we got to get to the bottom line with each other, so we can really help each other to see
Sure.
truth about ourselves because sometimes we don't see the truth about ourselves.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
again, the family used to be a place where that happened more often. I'm talking, we have to go back to the 50s probably, 40s, particularly with extended family in the home often because of economics. Where you'd have a grandma or grandpa around that could kind of listen to everything going on and kind of go pull you off to the side and go, you sound awfully angry at your mom or you sound awfully angry at your dad. What's going on? It might help them heal that. Listen to them and then send them to their parent to talk with them or just change their attitude towards their parent when there's really nothing the parent's really doing other than being a
Yeah.
parent. It
Mhm.
depends on what's going on.
Yeah.
And we don't have as much of that, and we need that. It's really important that we need that. We need to slow down enough to have that, you know? And I
Yeah.
find that very valuable. And by
I
the
I
way,
think that
Christians would tell you, just to take a shot at Christians here, would tell you that like guys like me in AA go, church is not near like AA. Now I grew up with an extreme group of guys that were extremely honest. Because of the kind of stuff we were dealing with, we had to be to survive and stay sober. But you don't find that kind of openness in most churches in men's group or mixed groups. You
mm,
don't. You find superficialness. So you're not going to hear them talking about a porn problem. As an example, when they might well have a porn problem that they don't want to have, but
yeah.
they're not going to tell their peers. Or they have a marriage problem, conflict, and they're not going to talk about it because you don't talk about those kind of things. Well, in AA, where I came from, you talk about it all. You name it, you talk about it. And that kind of openness and genuineness and accountability really can help change people. Some people that could really benefit from some really heavy therapy can do a lot of
Yeah.
changing just with that kind of dynamic because they're not hiding stuff. You
Yeah.
know,
There's so much to say. So, like, there's a lot of
I know.
superficiality in a lot of groups, especially religions. There's a lot of people as if, but there's this other thing you said, which I think I'd like to highlight as practically something to pay attention to for people when it comes to not liking yourself or even a hatred, which is patience. a classic symptom that you have more respect for yourself is you're more patient with yourself.
Amen.
Patient doesn't
Right.
doesn't mean permissive. It doesn't even
No.
mean nice. It means willing to slow down and take a look at things and not react quickly, right?
Correct.
And
Yeah.
patience is very hard. It's an attitude, it's a muscle that you have to train. Even the most like organically like chill people still need to develop patience with themselves because all of us are bombarded by expectations from the outside and from the inside and all these things. And it's really important to, if you want to treat yourself with more respect, you're probably going to have to learn the skill, develop the muscle of patience. You're going to have to work out that muscle.
Well, I don't know if you heard me talk about this, but early in my recovery, patience was not something. They said pray for patience, and I tried it and started having more problems, and I quit praying for patience. And I
Yeah.
hated praying for patience
Yeah.
because God would keep giving me things to be patient about. and
Yeah.
and I'm just trying to get out from underneath a whole slew of problems, and I keep getting more, and I'm like, I'm not praying for patience. I started praying for acceptance, to accept things as they are, and that helped with patience, I guess, indirectly. You know what I'm saying? But I hated patience. Pray for
Yeah.
patience.
And
No,
most people
thank you.
do.
Go ahead, do
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, most people do. And I'm just telling you, like, there's no greater freedom than when you can have ultimate patience with yourself.
Right. It helps you slow down, like you said, and step back and go, all right, why am I struggling with this?
Yep.
Why is this difficult? And then what do I need to do? Is there something I can do to move this forward? And not
Yeah.
rush and push it, and try and force change instead of being patient and looking at, if I want to change this, what is it really going to take to do that? And what am I capable of doing already? And what help might I need?
Right. And so we're talking about something that sounds again extremely simple, which is how much do you like yourself and why do you like yourself? When in reality, it's like there's
Right.
all these layers. There's all your childhood stuff, there's your culture, your religion, there's the world you live in, all the pressures of the world. But like when it comes to actually having respect for who you are, you can do some simple things like pay attention to self-talk and try to shift that gradually over time, or try to become a little more patient over time. Like these simple things don't fix PTSD or personality issues or shame or whatever it is, but they're a really
Yeah.
good start, you know?
Oh
And I want
yeah.
people to never
Some
feel
people they
pressured.
can do. Some people they can do a lot for.
Yeah, I
Some
agree.
people that have been doing it their whole life but don't realize it. Once they realize it, they can go, "Hey, I'm going to start listening to positive things. I'm going to start getting positive stuff. I'm going to start saying out loud positive things about myself."
Yeah.
One of the things I like about a gal I listen to and watch her sermon, or not sermons, teachings. She talks a lot about what you say matters, and what you say to yourself matters. So say
Absolutely.
say good things out loud. You say good things that can begin to replace the negative things that you've been saying for years. And it's true if you do it. And some people, have an easier time employing that and go, this is great. Gosh, I'm feeling better already. And some people, it's going to take a while for them to begin to have the good one out. When I got to a certain point where I felt good enough, I started getting away from what I resonated with that made me feel bad. Like I like to say, I will not listen to Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel to this day. I used to listen to that when I was frickin' drunk and depressed. I hate that song. And so I started listening to upbeat songs, not something that I resonated with, but then just reinforced how bad I felt. So I replaced it. It's kind of like turning that negative into a positive, and over time your mind can do that, where you can begin to go, okay, I'm not going to listen to rap because that keeps the anger going. I'm not going to listen to rap because it keeps the hurt other people going. I've heard a lot of my patients talk about that.
Yeah.
Change the music,
Yeah.
change the voice, and that can have a big impact on liking yourself more versus disliking, or to the extreme even hating yourself.
In,
You
in
know.
defense of music like rap, though, To be fair, to be fair, which I know a lot of people, if people actually watch this podcast, they will be flabbergasted that two, like one middle-aged white guy and an old white guy are talking about rap. But like, because I'm a different generation, I have a lot of fondness and respect for hip hop and rap of the 80s and 90s
Well, hip hop, yeah.
because like really cool stuff, like even though there's aggressive violence, blah 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 blah, but like if you actually think of again, there's a probably a large segment of the audience that relates to your side of this that's like, I can't believe he's even saying this, but just real quick, like it's actually poetry. Really good rap is poetry.
Yeah, it
And
is.
it's insanely good poetry. And it's really talented, to be quite honest. I don't care that the themes are violent or whatever. Like it's really good poetry. And for me at least, I have respect for that because like that's creativity that
Well,
I
no,
don't have, you
you
know.
can have respect for that creativity at the same time. Go, some people need to not put that in their head because they already got too much of that in their head, the negative
Right.
stuff
So we're
that
talking
comes
about
from it.
dose. We're talking about how
Yeah.
much you feed your mind that stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
the kids I've treated a lot of young adults, a lot of
Yeah.
adolescents, young adults over the years. I mean, and evaluated probably well
Yeah.
over 100,
Yeah.
and treated many extensively. They'll tell you what they would do with rap is they would change the kind of rap sometimes, or they would reduce the amount of rap,
Sure.
because they still found parts of it helpful and fun to
Yeah.
listen to, but
Yeah.
didn't inundate themselves with the things that reinforced how angry they were, how much they want to be violent, hurt someone else, things like that.
Yeah. So
That's the
it's
part that
doses.
changed.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because you're having a new relationship with yourself. So part of what you and
Right,
I are talking about
right,
for this hatred thing is really just gradually having a new relationship with how you view yourself. That's really the secret. Now, that can take a long time in some cases if it's really toxic shame from early in life. It can be
right,
really hard if you have a lot of trauma and all this
right.
stuff. But there's a lot of people that, you can start to have a marginally different relationship with yourself tomorrow, you know? And it's not rocket science. It's just you have to be committed to like 1% every week or something, like
By the way, people who are listening, guys and gals, if you listen to this and go, "That's a good idea," but you don't do anything about it, you might have a great dislike for yourself.
yes. That's what I
But
was saying earlier.
if you listen to this and you go, "Oh, these are some really cool ideas," and you start implementing them, you probably don't dislike yourself as much as some people do.
Exactly.
And you're going to feel even better about yourself, and probably that's going to turn up in your life as increasingly good things happening in your life.
Yeah.
You get to know me over time listening to this podcast. You're going to know I am not big on victims, and I hate helplessness. There's choices that we can make. We're not helpless over the vast majority of what we're dealing with in life, and we're even not helpless. Concentration camps taught people that ultimately you're not helpless over. They can't take away how you think. They can frickin' torture you, kill your family. The one thing that people succeeded getting through concentration camps better
Mm.
realized the Nazis could not control how they thought. So
Right.
they could put on a face, they could, show all kinds of things behaviorally, but they couldn't control what they thought. And
Yeah.
people that did the best thought in a positive way,
Yeah.
kept hope alive,
Yeah.
kept positive thoughts going.
Yeah.
So if you can do that in a concentration camp, we can do that out here. Because this
Easily.
world ain't nothing like that.
That's right.
People complain how tough the world is, but compared to that, hell, we live in, again, like I like to say, here lower income is middle or upper middle income in most countries.
That's right.
Particularly South America and Africa, and Southeast Asia. So although I keep seeing house prices go up everywhere, it's weird. We watch those, but it's like, why does a house cost so much in Indonesia?
It
You
shouldn't.
know, I
Yeah.
know. I don't know, but anyway, there's reasons why those things happen. So, you
Mhm.
have any concluding remarks, son?
No, I feel good about this conversation. We talked about the spectrum. We talked about how subtle it can
Okay.
be and how to track behavior over time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. We hope it was beneficial to some people, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Encouragement for Living Life. We hope you were encouraged by today's discussion. If you have a question, you can email us at lockwoodwithlockwood@gmail.com. We'll do our best to answer it on one of our shows. Hope to see you next time.